fans, it is May 23, Friday. This is Steve Mascord coming to you from London, and we've got a really special show for you today. I think it's maybe the newsiest show we've ever done, because we have Rhodri Jones from Rugby League Commercial, Tony Sutton, the CEO of the RFL, and Gary Hetherington, the newly minted owner of the London Broncos. We spoke to them during and after the relaunch of London Rugby League here in London at Australia House 2 days ago. And we asked them all the questions I hope that you would want asked, particularly in relation to the elephant in the room being a grand room made of Australian marble. But we never really got to the bottom of why it was at Australia House. What is the Australian connection, aside from a strategy company, strategy company Freshwater, who seemed to do a great job, and they did the bid books for the Perth Bears and also the Dolphins. But does that earn us a booking at Australia House? Anyway, so all those questions, the chairmanship of the RFL, the Nigel Wood situation. I asked Gary Hetherington, do you feel that by supporting Nigel Wood, you've alienated the NRL? All those big questions we got around to asking these three distinguished gentlemen just a couple of days ago. So I think you're really going to find this interesting. Now, if you're listening on the podcast, we've got to tell you that this is a radio show. It goes out live on rugbyleague.com, which is a 24-hour rugby league radio station. So be aware of that. Heads up. Have a listen. Great stuff. And if you're listening to it on rugbyleague.com, thank you. And this show is available as a podcast. You search WLF Kicks. That stands for White Line Fever Kicks, which is my kind of coverall rugby league podcast brand. And you can search for that anywhere on wherever you get podcasts from. And if you're listening on the podcast, there's also a Patreon for the podcast, which is basically patreon.com/WLF podcast. But, okay, now this is what we do every day. We do the birthdays in rugby league. The big prop from Cronulla, Paul Kahn, born in 1953, he is 72 today. Robert Simpkins, the Rabbit, the Wascally Rabbit, he is 65 today. Also played at Gold Coast, don't forget, in the early days of Gold Coast, and Eastern Suburbs. Paul Sirenen, Big Ciro, got some kids playing over here in Europe at the moment. He is 60 today. Happy birthday, Ciro. Who else have we got here? Andrew Patmore, I know best from his time at Canterbury. He's a centre. I'm sure he's a centre. He also played for Parramatta, South Sydney and Oldham. 57 today. Amazing how many of these players did have a stint in the UK, isn't it? A lot of them. This fella didn't. He was one of my favourite players as a kid. He's a year younger than me. Is Brett Rodwell from the Steelers. 55 today. Represented the Blues, represented New South Wales country, and had a stint at South Sydney as well. Let's keep going. Joey Litcher, the Lebanon international from South Sydney Rabbitohs. He's played touch footy with him in the Eastern Suburbs on a Wednesday evening. He ran rings around me, but everyone did. 45 today. Ben Ross, the big prop, played for PM13, played for Queensland, played for Dragons, Penrith, Cronulla, South Sydney. 45 today. Well, let's keep going. Let's keep going and see if we got Dec Patton. He's had a long career, hasn't he? Dec Patton still going strong. 30 today. His clubs: Warrington, Rochdale, Widnes, Salford, Bradford, Swinton, Featherston. 30 today. So happy birthday to Dec Patton. Keon Kalamatangi from the Bunnies. 27 today. We're getting into the young ones now. That'll pull us up. So after the break, we'll take you to the Great Hall at Australia House, and we'll hear from the CEO of the RFL. That's Tony Sutton.
As promised, in the shadows of the London Rugby League launch, the CEO of the RFL, Tony Sutton. I took a photo up there of you and Brian Carney together and sent it to Shane Richardson. He'll take credit for both of you.
What, because I didn't give Richo a name check when I talked to our administrators of the game? Yeah, I thought that the thought did cross my mind, Steve. The thought did cross my mind.
When you get back to Manchester, maybe people haven't read anything about this, and I'll say, what happened down there? How will you sum it up for them?
I'd sum it up as a really wonderful room of people that were here for the same reason, and that's rugby league in the capital city. And I've been really enthused by talking to people, just seeing who was in the room. I think sometimes we can downplay the depth of the rugby league community in London a little bit, and I think this is a fantastic reminder that actually there's a lot of people interested in our game doing well here.
There's clearly an attempt to draw attention to what Gary's doing, Gary's involvement, to try to create some excitement and get more people on board. And was that the main message today, that they're looking to get people on board? There wasn't like any kind of, X, Y and Z is definitely happening, was there? It was more about drawing attention to the project.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think Gary highlighted the fact of how he sees his role, a bit of a figurehead for it, a bit of a focal point to pull around, but also a lot of coordination, a lot of orchestration of his strategic plan. Obviously, we want to play a part in that. And some of the points I was making were things like the events that we bring to the capital city, the men's Ashes series, obviously the opener at the end of the year in October. But equally, we bring the Challenge Cup Finals Day here every year, where we have 4 wonderful games that highlight the sport, let alone the community clubs that are doing such great work as the Bedrock and the broad base of the pyramid, and what all those volunteers do. So I think you're exactly right. I think Gary highlighted his role about coordination.
He talked about being in Super League next year. Is that even possible?
Look, I love a part of a plan that's got a lot of aspiration in it. I think the beauty for me of the grading system, it's about the delivery of higher levels of investment, but sustained and consistent investment, and the ability for that to make clubs better across a wide range of criteria. So if that's in Gary's plan, then you can no doubt be sure that he'll give that a lot of focus. But I know a lot of clubs are looking at how to improve their scores, and as a result of significant and consistent investment into the areas that grading highlights.
How many teams are in Super League next year?
I always am a big believer in the way you kick off the season. Sorry, you should know what the end of the season looks like when you kick off the season. And when we kicked off the season, the aim was to have 12. So I think that's what will be in Super League next year.
There'll be 12 in Super League next year, and Salford won't be one of them, will they?
Well, I think that's to be seen, Steve. I think that's to be seen. That the issues at the club are well highlighted and well talked about. And I think we look to that ownership group to make sure that club is well looked after and stable going forward.
The other thing I want to ask you is it right that there is because it wasn't kind of clear today, is there funding for the south of England? Has it been restored? There seemed to be there's everything's going to come under one umbrella, and is that what's happening from an RFL point of view down here?
So the RFL invests some funding, some of the funding that we see from Sport England, and some of the funding that we generate ourselves into rugby league development plans across the country, and one of those is across London and the South East. So it's always been there. It's fluctuated in its level, and we invest in staff down here. Steve Gwan, for example, who's been down here for a long time, coordinating community and professional and amateur activity. So we look to maintain those levels of investment. Of course, one of our aspirations is to be able to increase those levels of investment, but those rugby league development plans, in conjunction with regions and local authorities and community and professional clubs, are in place across a wide range of regions in the country.
Could the current club-led review of the game have a positive or negative impact on what was announced here today, or move the goalposts on what was announced here today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of topics being discussed at the club-led review, which I think is right. And we wait to see the ones that really come forward and over what time scale. So I think it's a bit difficult to assess the impact of those. I think obviously the aim of a strategic review, of any strategic review, is positive outcomes, and therefore I think you would look for those to be positive outcomes on the type of thing that we've discussed here this morning, but we wait to see what comes through that club-led review.
Two more things. How have the fortunes or prospects of the French clubs altered over the course of the last 2 months, from the point of view that there was opposition or there was pessimism about them, to the point of view now where maybe that seems from the outside to have subsided a little bit. Is that a fair reading of the situation?
You mean through the Club Red Review?
Yes.
I think, as I said in the last answer, I think we wait for the outcomes of the Club Red Review. I'm not sure about the fluctuating opinion that you mentioned. I think we'll wait to see what the outcomes of that Club Red Review, and I think one of the aims of that review was that those outcomes go to RFL Council for discussion and ultimately potentially for vote. So it'll be what the game decides to do with the outcomes of that strategic review.
One last question, the chairmanship. What's the story? There isn't one at the moment. There's an executive, what is the position? Executive director, not a chairman. So can you just explain to everybody where that sits at the moment and where it's going?
Yeah, so the milestone was always that we would go to RFL Council on the 15th of July when the game gets to vote on certain issues, as it always has done. That's the next milestone in our journey on governance. And therefore what comes in then will lead us into the next phase for the game and the RFL board and the governance arrangements.
Enjoy your trip home, Tony. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you very much, no problem.
As promised, we're at the tail end of the media conference and announcement of London Rugby League, and I've got the Managing Director of Rugby League Commercial, Rhodri Jones, with me. Rhodri, the straight news line out of that, if I'm just want a news story and I've got to leave and file it straight away, is that London want to be in Super League next year. Is that possible?
Good question. 12.6 points on the grading system. I think 13.5 roughly would have seen them be in Super League this coming season. So is it possible? Yes, it is possible. But there's probably quite a lot of hard work to be done in the next 3 to 4 months. I know they're challenged on the field at the moment, so you've got to look at where those points come from. Challenged on the field at the moment, so where else can they add value to their current grading score?
I asked the previous guest this question. I'll ask you as well. How many teams are in Super League next year?
12 at this moment in time, Steve. That's the honest answer. Yes, we're all aware of conversations about 14 teams, etc., but at the moment we're planning for 12 teams.
And the club-led review can only put recommendations, can't it, to the Super League clubs? They have to decide the makeup of Super League, is that right?
Yeah, ultimately the Super League clubs have the final say on the makeup of the competition. So, yeah, strategic working group will provide recommendations. The first of those recommendations will be July time at the RFL Council. And thereafter, that I guess there will be an action plan after that. So, but yeah, ultimately it's the Super League clubs that decide the number of teams. When
you get back to the office and someone says to you, what was that function about in London, what will you tell them? How will you sum up what it was about?
There's a vision. It's aspirational. There's somebody on stage telling people what's going to happen and what their plan is. And I think that's something that perhaps hasn't been the case previously. But clearly there's a lot of hard work to come. But I'll take Gary's key takeaway, which is it's going to have to involve a lot of different people, a lot of different stakeholders to support the Broncos get to where ultimately they want to be. But I think everybody sits here nodding their heads, understanding the opportunity and nodding their heads in the belief that this is important for rugby league, and you know, we're fully supportive of that.
We are having to move out fairly soon, so if you could round up your conversations, we need to be out of the building in the next 15 minutes or so.
Were you? I can cut that out. Were you heartened that nobody mentioned NRL Europe? And you've just been speaking to 2 Australian journalists. Maybe they mentioned NRL Europe. Were you heartened that it wasn't mentioned?
They didn't ask me about NRL Europe. They asked me about the Ashes. So that's good. That's good messaging that we've got through today. Look, I think the NRL Europe, NRL investment, it's an ongoing dialogue with the NRL, but at the moment there's nothing to report in terms of where that's got to. So NRL Europe, who knows?
Do you think Gary is planning around Super League, or do you think he's planning around NRL Europe?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay, can you give us an update on Ashes ticket sales, and can you give us an update on Wembley ticket sales? a Challenge Cup final.
Yeah, so Challenge Cup, we'll expect to be over that 60,000 mark. So we're expecting another week or so of sales, which will tip us over that 60,000, which is great. It'll be great. It'll be we were 64 last year, so it'll be very similar to that kind of number, I would estimate at this point. And then Ashes, we've done over 100,000. So obviously we've already announced Headingley and Everton as sellouts. That's 70,000, and we've tipped over 30,000 for Wembley for the Ashes, which, having spoken on the stage earlier, that's without a huge amount of marketing push. That's been very organic. That's demand and us being able to supply. I think we've priced it really well. So we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us to double that 30 to 60. And more so, but we're in a relatively decent place at the moment.
We're about to be ejected from Australia House, which is probably better than being ejected from Australia. So we'll see you. Happy trip home.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I'm just saying, I wish this was TV, because we are in an alley behind a Covent Garden pub after the relaunch of London Rugby League at Australia House, which is a 13-minute walk away. We didn't do the interview on the way because I wasn't sure if voice notes and Google Maps work at the same time. But the man of the moment, Gary Hetherington, am I right in introducing you as the new owner of the London Broncos, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, you are, Steve, but the plan is to get a new ownership group together, a significant ownership group of individuals or companies that's got something to combine to the vision and support it, and have got some area of expertise to actually enable the club to grow and develop as it goes on. So that's an important objective.
I'm going to start with a very soft but complicated question, I think. Why and how? When did the bell go up, the light come on above your head? I want to leave Leeds and go to the London Broncos.
And it didn't quite happen like that, but Paul Carrick and myself had a conversation about 12 months ago about, in many ways we were probably coming to the end of our journey, and Paul has put his daughter Ali on the board at Leeds Rhinos, so in many ways she's the new Paul Carrick, and I said, look, as far as I'm concerned, I'll never be retired. I will at some stage, I suppose. But rugby league is the game that I've always been involved in. It's one of the few things I know much about. So I'll have a look at a project. I don't know what that will be. Not long afterwards, I got a call from Jason Loobster to tell me that David Hughes was coming out of London. I've known David for 30 years, of course. And he asked me if I knew of anybody who were capable of taking over London. My answer was, no, I don't. But I'll put my head around it and see what I can come up with. I had a good chat with David, who, as I say, I've known for 30 years, as to who could possibly be taking over from him, and there was nobody on the horizon. So I started talking to people both here and in Australia who I thought might have an interest in becoming an owner, a shareholder. And the more I was talking to them, the more they asked me as to what I was going to be doing. Were I going to be committed to the project? And I found myself saying, yes, I will be, in some way or other. It's ended up more so than I could have ever imagined. But that's how it all started, really. It was almost by accident, and it's an exciting and interesting project. It's quite a daunting one because it's a very challenging one, but there's so many opportunities that I'm quite energised by it all.
Now, we want to go back and join our friends, and we've got a beer in our hands, so we'll skip ahead a bit, Gary. I've just met Matthew from Freshwater, and I spoke to you when we were walking down here about how I met people from Freshwater. Freshwater are a strategy company, and they did the bid documents for the Dolphins and the Perth Bears. Are they doing a bid document for London to join NRL Europe?
NRL Europe, well, that's a new one. You obviously know more than me, Steve. But yes, they are. There is a partnership with London and Freshwater. So I met with Jonathan Flegg, the managing director, and other colleagues as well at Freshwater. To be honest, I didn't know of them until I went to Australia in January. I met them. I could see they've got a tremendous reputation, certainly in rugby league, but in other businesses as well. And you're quite right, they have delivered a very successful bid for both the Dolphins and indeed for the Perth Bears. And so they are on board with us in London, and they've got offices in London as well. So they've been part of the launch today, and they're doing a lot of research into possibility of a new name, a new brand, commercial opportunities, commercial companies that may be interested in getting involved. So they are a very important strategic partner of the London club.
But I saw Phil Gould on 6 Tackles with Gus, and he said that we want a London team when in NRL Europe, but there's a problem with the current owner. There's been some opportunism with the owner that needs to be sorted out before we can have a team in London. Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
All I can imagine is we're talking about the previous owner, which was David Hughes. David's no longer the owner of London Broncos. It has now got completely new ownership. And of course I'm at the heart of that. So my plan is that London needs to be a very powerful member of the European Super League. We need to engage with all the rugby league activity in London and the South. We need to provide a new audience, retain what we've already got, re-engage with the former fans, produce a very successful team, a very successful club, a very successful business, and help to raise significantly the profile and interest of rugby league in London and the south of England.
So if people in Australia think that you were prompted to do this by NRL Europe on the horizon, that's incorrect reading the situation.
Yes, it is. Yes, no, I was prompted by the former London ownership. And my belief that I've had for over 40 years that London strategically is a very important part of the game over here, the growth and the potential of it. It's never really been realised, so that's the objective now, to try and get it to realise its potential and become a major player in English Rugby League, which I think it can be.
Do you know anything about NRL Europe, and do you think it's a good idea?
No, I think there's plenty of scope for us renaming the name of our elite competition. It's currently the Betfred Super League. It could become the NRL of Europe, or indeed England. We've got French participation, of course, and we do need to be. I think we're full of admiration by what's happened in Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Islands. Rugby league has really taken the float and significantly increased its market share and its value and its spectator base and its number of television views. Now, great credit to the games administrators for doing that. We need to do likewise in England particularly, and to a certain extent in France. To do so, we obviously need to engage with other parts of the country. At present, 11 of the 12 Super League teams are all based in the north of England. The other one is in France. So we need regions like London and the south of England to become a participant, and that's the whole plan towards London.
Last question, I asked this question to Tony Sutton, and the listeners would have heard earlier in the program, and also to Rhodri Jones. How many teams will be in Super League next year? They both said 12, but we know there's a club-led review at the moment. We know there's a push for 14. You said at the press conference today that you think London could be in Super League next year. Can that happen with 14 teams? Can it happen with 12 teams? And how many teams do you think will be and should be in Super League next year?
I've always been an advocate for 14 teams, and that is the majority view of Super League club owners. They all want to actually work towards a 14-team competition as soon as possible. So that's not just my view, that's the collective view of the Super League clubs. I believe a 14-team competition would be the better number. It eliminates loop fixtures, which are unpopular, and given a certain imbalance to the Super League competition as well. And I think we should be striving to go to 14, ultimately to 16, 18, 20 even, and get our game on a national basis in England and the UK. That's got to be the longer term ambition.
There's a couple of follow-up questions I have to ask. I'd be wrong of me not to. Could that happen next year? Do you think 14 teams could happen next year? And I'll ask my two last questions at once, so I don't ask more follow-up questions. Do you feel that in being involved and supporting Nigel Wood, that in some way you may have alienated the NRL and your chances of working with them on this project?
Well, Nigel Wood is an outstanding administrator who did a terrific job for the RFL the last time he was in post. I'm not aware that he's got any grievances or problems with the NRL. I think there might be certain individuals that may have not be his cup of tea. But he was certainly the person who all the Super League club owners wanted to be back in charge of the game in England. He knows the sport, he knows the challenges that Super League clubs have got. He did a remarkable deal for the clubs with the Sky Sports the last time he was in as the chief executive, and I think all the clubs are really comfortable that he's now back in a very important role for the game, and he can spearhead the future direction of the game in England and indeed in France. So that's Nigel Wood. As I said, I'm not aware that he's got any issues with the NRL, and he shouldn't have either. We do need the NRL on board. We need to be part of their strategic partnership, and we need to be working together towards maximising the value of international rugby league, looking at where we can take rugby league both in the NRL and in Super League 2. The World Club Challenge remains an outstanding opportunity. There's so much potential that we just need the leaders of the game to come together and to start talking and realising that potential.
And next year, 14 or 12?
I think it could well be 14. It could well be 14. There's a desire amongst the Super League club owners to make it 14. A lot of water yet to go under the bridge. But from a grading point of view, we're looking to elevate London to get 15 points, which is a Grade A licence. And that in itself would actually elevate them above some clubs that's there already.
Let's go back and have a beer, Gary. Congratulations on a successful morning.
Thank you.
Well, we've had some interesting, if you're listening on live radio on the broadcast on Friday morning, we've had some interesting songs in between all those interviews. We had Dirty Laundry from Don Henley, and we just had With or Without You by U2. And I think the message regarding NRL Europe is that no one's, well, certainly none of the people we spoke to are banking on it happening. They're going to continue with or without the NRL. But the question is in what term, on what terms and in what format. And these Rhodri Jones and Tony Sutton each said 12 teams next year. Tony Sutton said you've got to know what's happening the following year when you start any season. But Gary Hetherington says most owners favour 14 teams, even going up to 15, 16, 18, 20. So, and he believes there could be 14 teams next year. So I think that's kind of there's certainly some disagreement over that. And the people who go to work every day at the Etihad campus have one view, and the people out there in Clubland have a different view about how many teams should be in Super League next year. And that's despite the fact that the TV money keeps going down. So how you have more teams with the TV money going down, everyone has to accept less money. And I guess that's where the pressure on the French clubs originates from. We have a very busy morning on rugbyleague.com because after the 10 o'clock news, we'll be taking you to Sydney, and there is a big NRL game on at which the continuous call guys will be bringing to you, and that is Here We Go Again, Manly and Para, or actually at CommBank Stadium it's Para and Manly. And the team changes, the final team lists haven't been posted yet. I was going to bring those to you. News kicking around. Tom Eisenhuth, the big prop from the Dragons, has had to retire due to multiple injuries. Hasn't played this year. So we wish Tom Eisenhuth all the best in his retirement. One more. I'll come back for one more brief chat, and then we'll move on to our NRL coverage for the weekend. I think that's just about it for this episode of Good Morning League Fans. Coming up after the 10 a.m. news, if you're in the UK, you can hear all the build-up and all the action from Parramatta versus Manly from our friends at the Continuous Call. And yeah, some interesting stuff out of those three interviews, I think, with Rhodri Jones, Tony Sutton and Gary Hetherington. Clearly, when I say use the word clearly, I shouldn't be starting any sentence on this subject with that word, because nothing is really very clear, is it? We kind of don't. Gary has put a flag up a pole, hoping that some people salute as far as getting in a new ownership group into London Broncos. Is certainly going to the Australian High Commission was a good step in that direction. But we don't really know who those owners are going to be. We don't know the makeup of Super League next year. We don't know if it's going to be 12 teams, as Tony Sutton and Rhodri Jones say, or whether it's going to be 14, as Gary Hetherington says. And you would say that the balance of power in the British game is with the clubs, not with head office. So previous evidence would suggest that Gary's prediction is more likely to be right, just based on some of the things that have happened recently with the people leaving the board at the RFL at the behest of the clubs. So again, an attempt to introduce some clarity into what is a very, very cloudy scene in British Rugby League at the moment. But again, thanks for joining us, and don't forget to follow rugbyleague.com on all the social media platforms.